We're going to continue our critique point by point of William Lane Craig defending genocide and other war crimes within the Bible, his interpretation of the Bible, more specifically, his historical interpretation of portions of the Deuteronomic history, even more specifically. So we're going to pick up the video conversation at 2:16 into the video. Again, both the video and my book, Jesus Loves Canaanites, are linked below if you want to either see Craig's full sequence in his original video of what he says, unimpeded by my commentary, or if you want more of my commentary, you can get my book. So let's take a look at Craig, and then we'll debrief it.
People. So that this represented God's judgment upon these Canaanite tribes. And when you read the ancient non-biblical literature about these tribes, this was a culture that was incredibly evil. Clay Jones has written an article on this in Philosophia Christi, in which he looks at some of these ancient texts. And the sort of the bestiality and human sacrifice and the mockery of God that characterized this culture was really, really vile, and it raises the hair on your neck to read these texts of what these people were like. And this story of the conquest of Canaan only comes after the story of God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah.
Okay, this is the first of two sections we're going to look at in this video. So in the first part, Craig talks about how, well, the society of Canaan was so corrupt that the people just had to be pushed out of the land and slaughtered for any who remained within the land. And then he gives as evidence of this an article published in Philosophia Christi in 2009 by Clay Jones. Now, I've talked a lot about Clay Jones on Twitter, in my old blog, and also in previous YouTube videos, and on how awful that article is. And honestly, I believe that Clay Jones' article, let me just pull up the title first of all before we continue. So here you go. This is actually the article published in 2009. We don't hate sin, so we don't understand what happened to the Canaanites, an addendum to divine genocide arguments. Now, the first thing I'm going to say here is if you really want to understand the nature of ancient Canaanite society, go to specialists in ancient Near Eastern history, including archaeologists. Don't go to a Christian apologist who is looking for a selective interpretation of historical texts and or archaeology in order to justify ancient accounts of genocide, which is really what Clay Jones is engaged in here. It's a bald case of motivated reasoning. So when Jones goes through the sins of ancient Canaan, so he gives examples. And what he does is he gives examples by citing biblical verses and also select excerpts from examples of extant Canaanite literature of the period in which they refer to various actions. So first of all, he gives examples of the Canaanites engaging in idolatry, then examples of the Canaanites engaging in incest, then examples of the Canaanites engaging in adultery, and examples of Canaanites engaging in child sacrifice, and examples of Canaanites engaging in homosexuality and bestiality. And then he concludes that these select texts give us a justification, or the Israelites a justification for the mass killing of the people. So for example, here, the section of bestiality, just look at this example. He says, Hittite laws 199 states, there is no punishment if a man has intercourse with a horse or a mule. And then he cites an excerpt from an Canaanite epic Baal cycle, in which it makes reference within this literary text to sort of mythological intercourse between a human and an animal. And that is kind of evidence that Clay Jones is citing He provided examples that Canaanite society engaged in bestiality, and thus it is an evil, corrupt society which warranted the killing of all the people. Now, of course, the first thing here, the first thing that you want to say by way of response is to point out, even if you grant everything in the argument, infants, small children, are not themselves complicit in bestiality as moral agents or in these other things. It would not warrant killing small children and infants. It would not warrant killing the mentally handicapped, for example, people who are not active moral agents complicit in the sins of the culture. It doesn't warrant killing them. And yet, Craig has already defended a view of the Israelite soldiers invading the land, forcibly driving people out in a process of ethnic cleansing, killing anybody who resists, including children. And then, additionally, as I noted in the last video, passages like Deuteronomy 20:16-18 describe God giving a mandate for the Israelites to kill everything that lives and breathes within the land. And I said, even if that's hyperbolic language, it still is language for the indiscriminate killing of human beings, including small children, including infants, who could not themselves be morally complicit in any of these actions, or thus morally culpable for them. So Jones is advocating here for the sins of the culture to warrant killing children and infants. Now, another thing about his article that is so incredible, and that this makes it such an offensive document to have been published in an academic journal, is that he then goes from this very shoddy evidence. So, well, actually, I haven't said anything about the evidence being shoddy yet. Let me say something about that first. So then the next thing to note is that I said, for the sake of argument, even granting that the culture was as sinful as he claims, that doesn't warrant killing children and infants. But let's challenge the assumption that the culture is as sinful and wicked, as depraved as he claims. He provides no evidence of that. I mean, again, he cites as widespread bestiality in the culture an excerpt from a Canaanite epic literary text that refers in a clearly metaphorical way to sex between a human being and an animal within a literary text. That doesn't show that bestiality as such is widely practiced and accepted within the culture. It's just an absurd comparison. And in fact, and I'll just say that same problems hobble each one of the other aspects of his argument here. So note that, and then note again that he cites, quote, homosexuality as part of a rationale for genocide, for the mass slaughter and attempt to eradicate a people and a culture is their acceptance of, quote, homosexuality, unquote. That in and of itself is a pretty shocking claim. And then perhaps the most shocking thing about Clay Jones' article that makes it so deeply offensive is he then argues that American society today is not less corrupt than ancient Canaan. And he gives examples, pointed examples in his article of how corrupt American society is today. And one thing I'll notice that they're just as absurd and shoddy as the examples he gives for ancient Canaanite society. So, for example, Clay Jones cites lyrics from a Metallica song from the year 1998 as evidence that America accepts bestiality. Bestiality is widely practiced. The evidence he gives for that is lyrics from a Metallica song in 1998. It is so crazy. Such an extraordinary leap of reasoning. How did that ever pass peer review at Philosophia Christi? That is not evidence that bestiality is widespread in American society and accepted in American society. And then note the whole rationale, the flow of Clay Jones's argument is this: that if God was in principle warranted for the corruptions of ancient Canaan to eradicate the society, including killing women, children, infants, and if American society today is no less evil than ancient Canaanite society, which is what Clay Jones argues, then Clay Jones has given us an argument for genocide against American people today, mass killing, slaughter of American people, the attempt to eradicate American national identity as such, genocide. He's made an argument for that. I mean, it is just crazy. And this is what Bill Craig is citing to justify the great evil of the Canaanites. Now, I said earlier that this is a bald case of motivated reasoning. Motivated reasoning is an informal logical fallacy in which one already has the conclusion they want to achieve, and they now look for evidence to rationalize and justify that conclusion. And that is clearly what is going on here. William Lane Craig wants to justify the mass slaughter of Canaanite people, the indiscriminate killing of Canaanite women and children and infants. And the way he does so is by using this baldly cherry-picked, rationalized defense of killing published by Clay Jones, and just says, wow, this is such an important argument to show the great evil of the Canaanites, which it is nothing like that. It is, again, a cherry-picked case of motivated reasoning by an apologist who really is all they're doing is what, again, is time and again throughout history, the rationale, the rhetoric of genocide, which is to dehumanize and objectify the people that you are killing or that you want to justify the killing of and the destruction of by talking about how evil and wicked or subhuman they are. And that's all that this is. Let's look now at the second part of Craig's clip. I had just cut it off at the beginning of there, but this is where he's just now beginning to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah.
After the story of God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, and you may remember in that story, Abraham argues with God and says, God, if there are 50 righteous people in these cities, will you destroy them? Will you destroy the good along with the unjust? And God says, no, for the sake of the 50, I will not destroy them. And then like a Middle Eastern merchant, Abraham bargains with God. Well, God, if there are 40 in the city, will you destroy it? God says, no, for the sake of the 40 righteous people, I will not destroy it. And God says, Abraham says, oh God, don't be impatient with me, but if there are 10 righteous men in the city, will you destroy it? And God says, no, for the sake of the 10, I will not destroy it. And Abraham doesn't dare to argue any further with God. But the purpose of this story, which comes in the narrative prior to the conquest of Canaan, I think, is to emphasize that God is not going to judge these people until they are utterly, utterly deserving of judgment.
Craig recounts the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and then he draws a conclusion of the message of the story and how you should apply it now to the destruction of the people of Canaan in Joshua, is that it is saying that God will not destroy people until they are utterly worthy of destruction. I have a problem with his interpretation. I think that he's actually got a very wrong message from the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. The first thing to note is this. There's something intrinsically problematic with the story. So Abraham bargains God down to say, well, if there are 10 righteous, will you destroy it? And he won't go lower than 10. But think about what the problem here is. Let's say there are 9 people who are completely innocent. Does it warrant killing the 9 people because of the sins of the other people? The problem here is that for punishment to be just, the punishment must be, among other things, it must be proportional to this action, to the sin. Let's leave aside whether the destruction of Canaan, or so the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is proportional. But the other thing must be the punishment must discriminate between those who are culpable and those who are not culpable. If a punishment doesn't discriminate between the culpable and the non-culpable, then the punishment by definition is unjust. If, for example, you have 10 people lined up for a firing squad and 2 of them are innocent and you kill all 10, then the overall act was unjust insofar as 2 people were indiscriminately killed along with the 8 who were culpable. And Bill Craig's take on this text is that, well, if the city is destroyed and there are 9 innocent people, well, it's just because they deserved it. The other people deserved it. But again, that falls afoul of this principle that a just judgment must discriminate between the just and the unjust. Now, there is an exception where you could say there's such a thing as collateral damage, which could be justified in the case of war. You get this kind of just war theorization where you say you're going to drop a bomb and you're dropping the bomb, let's say, on the military base, but you know that there in the military base, there may be some civilians harmed or killed as well, but you're not targeting those civilians as such. They're simply justified collateral damage um, because of the overall proportional good of achieving success in the war by bombing the military base. And the argument here might be, well, maybe God is applying, following a similar principle, that killing of the innocent nine, hypothetically speaking, would be justified because of the overall justification for the fact that most people within the city are sinful and culpable. The problem here is that God does not have the limited resources and power of military operation or of an army, so that God has to put up with collateral damage. God, as an omnipotent being, can discriminate between the just and the unjust and only punish those who are warranting punishment, which just again raises the question of the problem of God's justification. If God could have discriminated the nine, why would God not have done so? And why would Abraham not have reasoned God down to one innocent person and saying, you cannot, whatever you do about everyone else, you cannot indiscriminately kill the one innocent person within the community. So that is a big problem here. Another related problem is this is talking, the whole context of the conversation Abraham had with God is talking about culpable moral agents within Sodom and Gomorrah who are um, potentially innocent. What is not even in the conversation are people who are non-culpable moral agents, such as infants and small children. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah were cities. They had infants and small children, just like Jericho did. Uh, so, what is interesting there is they're not even considered in the equation. Abraham doesn't even broach the conversation. God, how can you destroy Sodom and Gomorrah indiscriminately, eradicate the entire cities for the actions of moral agents, even if they're the vast majority of the moral agents, given that there are innocent infants and small children within the city? This is indiscriminate, and you are an omnipotent God who could discriminate between the guilty and the innocent, and yet you are not doing so here. You cannot do this. This is wrong. These are just two obvious problems. The fact that it's wrong to kill nine innocent people if you can discriminate and you're not required by limited resources to accept collateral damage. And number two, that it's wrong to kill infants and small children. This brings me to what I think is the actual lesson that I think Craig has missed of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. He describes Abraham as reasoning, bargaining with God, arguing with God, like a Middle Eastern merchant. And one of the things I think that Craig misses here is that this is a common pattern in the Bible, whether it's Abraham here, whether it's Abraham in the offering of Isaac. Richard Milton's book, Abraham's Silence, is great for exploring these themes within the offering of Isaac. Because, well, I won't say more about that, but I'll just say if you want to read more about that, read his book, Abraham's Silence. Moses, who also argues with God, Job, the psalmist, people throughout history have argued with God. But people who are often closest to God are the ones most at liberty to argue with God, which makes sense. Think about it like this. If you are in a workplace and the boss does something you don't like, you're probably not going to confront the boss. But if the boss is also your father, you might well have the confidence because of your relationship to go up to the boss, who is also your father, and say, Dad, don't think you should have done that. And that is the kind of intimacy that is emblematic of the people most close to God within Scripture. And this models, in fact, the very identity of the people of God, Israel, named after Jacob wrestling with the angel. That is what it is to be Israel, is to wrestle with God. So we, as we are grafted into God's people, We are invited to wrestle with God and to push back and to struggle and to question. When I question aspects of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, say, well, why stop at 10 people? It's not a matter of impiety on my part. It's first of all intellectual and moral honesty and consistency, but it is also an act of piety. As I take on the mantle of Abraham, I take the baton from Abraham and continue the conversation, which is what God's people do. The entire conversation of questioning the way someone like Bill Craig is reading and defending his genocide interpretation, his pro-genocide interpretation and pro-ethnic cleansing interpretation of Joshua is a further manifestation of what it is to be God's people, to take up that mantle, to take the baton, to wrestle with God and to question. So I think that he's just gotten the exact wrong message here.